Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, So Now What? Helping Parents and Caregivers Navigate a School Year Like No Other. We are here with Common Sense Media for this webinar. My name is Dory Taylor, and I'm producer for Remake Learning Days across America. And together with Remake Learning Days, and the AIU, we are so pleased to partner with Common Sense on this evening's webinar. This series occurs every Wednesday in September, and again is for parents and caregivers like all of us. And we are so excited to have both Jennifer Ehehalt and Michael Robb with Common Sense to talk with us for the next 30 minutes. A few notes: if you all have questions, we do welcome them in the chat, and we'll leave some time at the end to answer your questions with Jennifer and Michael helping us. So let me give you a little bit of background information. Jennifer Ehehalt is the Senior Regional Manager at Common Sense Education. Jennifer has over 20 years of experience in education. She continues to partner with state-level organizations, school districts, and community organizations across the nation to help integrate common sense education resources. And Jennifer provides educational leadership through consultation with school districts, professional development, and conference presentations. Jennifer has a BS in elementary education and a Master of Education in educational leadership. And we have with us Michael Robb, a Senior Director of Research at Common Sense, overseeing the research program, evaluation of organizational impact, and program development research. Michael has been involved in education, issues involving media and children for over 15 years. He has published research in a variety of academic journals on the impact of electronic media on young children's language development, early literacy outcomes, and problem-solving abilities. Michael also has supervised community educational outreach efforts, helping parents and teachers make the most of quality children's programming. Michael received a BA from Tufts University and a master's and PhD in psychology from UC Riverside. And both Jennifer and Michael have a connection to Pittsburgh. So without further ado, I welcome Jennifer Ehehalt and Michael Robb with Common Sense.
Thank you so much, Dory. It's a pleasure to be here. We're here tonight or this evening to talk to you all about tweens, teens, and mental health and how very important it is right now, especially in these times. So sit back, relax, and grab a cup of coffee, hot tea, wine. And so on, get comfortable. So if you're not familiar with Common Sense, I want to just quickly let you know that Common Sense is a national nonprofit, and we're really known for 3 different areas. We rate, educate, and advocate for kids, families, and schools. And so Common Sense Media is probably our most well-known or popular resource for parents, families, where we rate and review media for apps, games, books, music, websites, and we take a deep dive and let you know what the learning potential is for that particular piece of media and the age-appropriate content that is delivered through that media. Second, you'll see the Common Sense Education logo. We offer high-quality, free resources around the topic of digital media, digital citizenship, media balance, a healthy media diet, and we want to make sure that we're empowering educators and students to harness this idea of media and technology and build those positive, healthy habits when connecting online. And then the last one, you'll see Common Sense Kids Action, and that is our advocacy group. And our advocacy team is always working hard to advocate for kids and families. So check us out at commonsense.org for more information on some of the other things that we do at Common Sense. So without further ado, I want to turn it over. One of the other big things we do at Common Sense before I turn it over to Michael Robb is research. And so we wanted to share our latest research on tweens, teens, tech, and mental health. And so he's going to go through some of the findings that became, or, that kind of surfaced from this research. And then I'm going to follow up with ways that, or resources that we have to support parents as they navigate through this time. So without further ado, Michael.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to our wonderful host for inviting us to participate today. I want to talk a little bit about this recent research report that we put out over the summer called Tweens, Teens, Tech, and Mental Health. And I want to start by just acknowledging that concerns about teens and tweens' mental health and digital technology use were already high before 2020 introduced new and global challenges that are defining this generation. Almost overnight, schools and peer networks and workplaces and communities were pushed online. We've seen record levels of unemployment that have been registered. Economies everywhere, including in the US, have ground to a really painful halt. And a review of history and also developmental science tells us that families with children are likely to be hit hardest by these types of economic downturns, and that the mental health and well-being of many children and youth are likely to suffer as a result. In the months and the years that were leading up to the current pandemic crisis, adolescents, who we define in the report as young people between the ages of 10 all the way up to age 24, were reporting increased symptoms of depression, anxiety, and suicide risk. And suicides have been increasing among every age group in the US, but they rose most steeply among 10 to 14-year-old girls with a rate that tripled between 1999 and 2017. Younger girls, roughly between the ages of 10 to 14, and adolescents of color are, according to the research, the most vulnerable. And parents, educators, and mental health professionals are struggling to respond to these increases. And so now the combination of a global pandemic, an economic downturn, closure of schools, in addition to many other issues that are going on in the world, is placing additional pressures on the mental health of adolescents and the adults that now have to fill multiple roles, including teaching them, parenting them, and supporting them. Next slide, please. So to understand how we can best support adolescents and develop guardrails in the future, we created this report. And the report synthesizes basically what is known about adolescents' mental health and its association specifically with digital technology use. And this was a really substantial literature review where we looked at the best available research over the last decade and we reviewed well over 100 articles and book chapters and other resources. And there are three big points that I want to make while I'm talking here. Number one is that I think technology can and should be a safety net right now. That concern about adolescents' mental health were high before COVID-19 hit, but a lot of that fear is driven by fear, not facts. We have this very kind of alarmist view, and we really need something with a lot more nuance. And the challenge is figuring out how and when we should be concerned. And the third main point I want to talk about is that the conversations around screen time are changing as adolescents have moved online to meet their educational and social needs, which necessitates us to kind of flip the script to understand like how technology should be used, not just how much technology is used. Next slide, please. All right, so point number one, right? When you think about adolescents and digital technology use, you can't divorce it from understanding families' household economic context, their socioeconomic context. That's critical to any kind of discussion of this nature because poverty and your economic resources impact both adolescents' mental health and it also stratifies adolescents' access to digital devices as well as their online experiences. So in other words, we can't understand adolescents' mental health and we can't understand their digital technology use without considering poverty because it shapes both. Next slide, please. When you look at this chart, you can see that there are a lot of children who are living in either low income or poverty level homes. So 1 in 6 adolescents live in poverty and 1 in 3 in low income households. When you put those together, you end up with about almost 50% of adolescents living in poverty or low income homes. And that's just critical to understand because when you think about kids' health, this economic disparity is one of the most powerful explanations for health risk and for disparities. And kind of with each step up the income ladder, your chances of mental health, improves generally. Household resources also influence how much time adolescents spend online, how supported they are in navigating the online world, and their risk for having negative experiences that spill over from the real world, as well as what kinds of devices, how well connected they are, how reliable your internet is, what kinds of support you have for learning and communication. Your household resources are connected to all of those things. And this type of stratification of experiences with digital technology can lead to like a rich get richer kind of effect, where you end up with many adolescents who are benefiting from time online while others are left further behind. And COVID has really shown a bright light on these inequalities, right? And the risk now is that adolescents who have fewer resources are going to be at heightened risk for mental health problems, that the lack of connectivity and access to online supports are going to be an issue, and as a result, inequalities are going to amplify. And in fact, Common Sense's own research shows that millions of kids lack adequate devices or connectivity to participate in school, or or other positive aspects of connectivity. Next slide, please. With kids and with adolescents, I think we often hear a very specific set of messages about device use. We hear concerns about technology addiction, but recent media coverage has really been focused on how smartphone use and social media use may be to blame for increasing rates of depression among youth, particularly among girls, as well as increases in things like suicide or suicidal ideation or self-harm. Other common fears that we hear about frequently are that young people are becoming disconnected from parents and friends in the offline world, that they're just increasingly immersed in the digital world, lots of concerns about cyberbullying. Right? These kinds of fears are very common among parents, among educators, and the common narrative is that smartphones are linked to these issues and others. Right? But for me, as a researcher, the question is, what is the evidence? Right? The fears are high, but how much evidence is there actually that screen time is harmful? Next slide, please. When we do really systematic reviews, what we find is that there's actually not that much support for these kinds of fears for all adolescents, right? Instead, what we find is that the associations between things like social media use and mental health are actually pretty small. In many cases, they can be like the relationship between mental health and social media can actually be explained by other factors. And it's also just as likely that how adolescents are feeling is driving their tech use versus the other way around, right? So for example, a recent large study showed that for girls only, that early negative mental health symptoms could predict later social media use, but that their social media use could not predict their negative mental health at a later time period. And they found nothing for boys, right? So it's nuanced. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell which way the relationship is going. This does not mean, of course, that all social media influences are positive. But what I think we should be thinking about is the fact that mental disorders among adolescents have been with us for a long time, sometimes at high levels, and they emerge from a complex set of factors, right? There's social factors, there's genetic factors, there's experiential factors, which all have, varying degrees of influence across, kids' development as they age and across different situations and contexts. So it's not easy to point at just one cause that's driving changes in adolescent mental health, right? It would be great to just be like, aha, it's Snapchat, and then just close it all down. But that's not possible, at least not right now, and certainly not without better data. But what we do see when we look more closely is that offline risk often precedes and mirrors online risk. That is, those teens who are struggling offline also tend to struggle online and have more negative experiences offline and online. Adolescents who are especially sensitive to social evaluation, right, who may have like what you might consider low status offline, who have a history of victimization or bullying, those are kids who may have unique vulnerabilities as they go into online spaces. But you also see that for some some subgroups like LGBTQ teens that they say that they are finding safe and supportive communities, that it can be really positive for them. And increasingly, we see that adolescents are going online to seek help, to search out information related to mental health problems. And during COVID, to connect with each other even more virtually. If we've taken away the physical spaces, they're connecting in digital spaces. Next slide. The last point I want to talk about is about flipping the script on screen time, right? I think screen time is a flawed way of looking at this. It's a flawed metric because it doesn't tell us how adolescents are using their time online, and not all screen time is equal, right? Going on Zoom to talk with a friend is not the same as doing schoolwork on Google Classroom, which is not the same as being on Snapchat, which is not the same as playing a video game, which is not the same as watching, The Office for the 5th go around on Netflix, right? It's not equal. They satisfy different needs that kids are having at different times. So all screen time is not equal. Another thing to keep in mind is that fights over screen time are a major source of family conflict. And unlike screen time itself, which has a pretty tenuous relationship to depression, family conflict is a known predictor of depression. So I think in some cases, the conflict that we bring up over screen time can actually make things worse, and is often worse than just the kid, having a little more free reign over their screen time by itself. Another point that I wanted to make was that COVID-19 life in the COVID-19 period leaves screen experiences as one of the only options for many social and educational needs that you can't fulfill otherwise right now. It's good to think about all the kids who are going online if they are struggling to seek out information. In a recent study that was done a couple of years ago, they found that 87% of adolescents had gone online to seek out information about mental health, that 64% had used Ehehalt to serve their mental health. And like I said, that digital spaces can offer unique supports especially for youth who are kind of marginalized offline, right? They can see benefits from being online communities. Next slide. So when we think about this topic, right, we don't want to think about all teens as like a monolithic group. We want to think about them as who's most at risk and how can we support them, and what is the kind of critical balancing act that teens, parents, educators, tech companies, and others have to strike for teens, right? Even before the pandemic hit, lots of teens were spending more time online than traditional classrooms. So this is something we're going to be grappling with regardless of what the context is right now. So what can we do? What can we offer? It's going to vary depending on, who that kid is and what their special issues are. But we have some more general advice that I'm going to pass off to Jennifer to let you know about, including some resources that Common Sense has put out.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing all of that wonderful information and research on tweens, teens, and mental health. It's so important now more than ever. And so now I want to kind of switch gears, and we want to show you how much Common Sense can support you and your families in a time like this. So I wanted to just walk through a few resources that may help get you started in having these conversations at home. And so I wanted to share with you ways to support kids' mental health right now. And some of the things we want to make sure we're mindful around are, the first one you'll see here is steer kids towards positive, healthy online interactions. As Michael mentioned before, the way in which kids are interacting with media and technology is different, and it's not all the same. So whether they're interacting on social media with friends or interacting within Google Classroom because of school, those healthy online interactions are very important. So make sure you're communicating with them and understanding who they're connecting with and why. Reserve judgments about screen time. Now more than ever, we need to just set aside what we've always known in terms of media balance, because we are in a time right now where we have to be connected via media. It's almost necessary when it comes to hybrid and remote learning. And it's also a big piece of how our kids are connecting with their friends around social media tools. The next one is be prepared for kids to enter social media earlier. And now more than ever, this is really true because parents are finding different creative ways for their kids to connect with their friends. Now that the face-to-face situations have been pulled back and they're just not happening like they used to, and kids are missing their friends and their social networks. And so now more than ever, I think parents are bending the rules, and we're seeing more and more kids entering into Facebook Messenger and, you know, some of those other chatting platforms and video platforms so that they can connect. Ask what you are shutting out when you're turning off your child's smartphone. It's really easy to say, no more phone for the rest of the week, or I'm taking your device for the rest of the week. Be mindful that sometimes in some situations, kids rely on that device for more than just entertainment. It is a way for them to connect and feel wanted and feel valued, whether it be they're connecting for educational purposes or for socializing. And so maybe you'd want to take a step back and revisit, maybe not removing the entire device, maybe just removing certain apps or games that they're involved in. Identify when social media creates real world stress. And so, you know, we want to make sure that they're engaging in media and technology in a happy, healthy way. We don't want them to engage and get offline and feel more stressed than when they were going online. And so be mindful around your child's attitude and behavior when they're engaging in online media and technology. And then pay close attention if your kid is already struggling offline. This is true to say that because they're struggling offline doesn't mean going online is going to help solve anything. If anything, they're going to be exposed to more things through social media that may do more harm than good. So be mindful around what they're feeling and going through offline, so that when you go online, you're introducing them to healthy experiences. And so now I want to show you, I included this list of resources on this particular presentation so that you have a resource to go back to. So I'm going to just go out to the Common Sense Media website because I really think it's important to show you some of these resources. And so the first one is, in light of COVID and everything happening with, you know, families and pivot, you know, teachers pivoting to reinvent classrooms, and kids are learning in lots of different ways, it's really throwing a curveball on everyone's mental health. And so we've curated lots of content around this particular topic. And so here's one article I wanted to share with you. So Common Sense is a parenting, media, and everything in between article page. And so we share articles on all kinds of different relevant topics all the time. And so I thought this one was really important for the conversation tonight. Kids' mental health tech tools for suicide help, coping skills, and professional support. And I just want to quickly go through so you can see some of the information that is easily shared, and then you can get everything you need to make a decision about what would be best for your family and what you need. So for parents, there's different organizations that we highlight for you. Immediate help for kids in crisis. So there's hotlines, there's websites, ongoing support. So there's different apps, there's a COVID coach. And then for more information or a positive focus, you know, there's other different resources out here. So I invite you to explore some of these things on this list. I know Headspace, Meditation and Sleep, I love that one. It's one that I have. And it's also, you know, down to a mini meditation too, so for free. So I really like that aspect. And so check out this article. The other thing we do is we have best of lists. And one of the ones I found for tonight's purposes, or for today's session, was books that build self-esteem. So again, we curate lists of books, and this topic, you can see, you can break it down if you have a preschooler, a little kid, a big kid, a tween, or a teen. And so if I would click on teens, you know, okay for now, teens, there's a bigger list here. But, you know, getting your kids reading, I think, is really important. And what do you want them to read? This is a nice way to just start that conversation and curate your own library of books that might be helpful with the conversation of mental health. And then on the side here, you can see I picked the one on books that build self-esteem, but you know, there's best books for kids, there's empathy, there's character development. So we have lots of different topics that you can go beyond just this page that I'm sharing with you. And then the other one I wanted to show you, or the next one, was apps to help with mental health. So again, we've curated a list of apps for little kids, tweens, teens. And so some of these are, podcast versions, some are an app, some are a website with activities, articles, support in that way. So I would invite you also to check these out. The reviews are there, so you can click into any of these and learn more about what it is. And then the next one I wanted to share with you, this is something that we've been doing. I've been doing this a lot with educators and sharing out this learning conversation template. Now with hybrid learning and remote learning, parents and families are more engaged than student learning more than ever. We're not just reaching out to our educators because our child is failing or there's a behavior issue, right? We want to be involved in the learning. We're right next to them most of the time, even with little ones. But teens and tweens is a little more difficult because their direct instruction is more independent. And so instead of the good old aged question on how was school today? What did you learn today? I think this learning conversation template is a really nice stepping stone into building that communication at home to understand what kids are learning and what they're feeling and what they're going through. And so this discussion guide is really a checkbox, right? So the learning goal, you can work with the educator or the child's teacher, talk about what that learning goal is for the week or the month or the day. And then be encouraged on what to listen for. What do you want to be hearing from your child when, they're learning X, Y, Z, and then what you heard. And it's just a nice communication tool with your child's teacher. At any age, I think the education piece is really important, and we need to build those relationships with the educators in the classroom. And then last but not least, I wanted to share this is the last be-all conversation around wideopenschool.org, powered by Common Sense. The reason I wanted to bring it up is this is really setting up your family for success around student and learning experiences for our kids. So online and offline activities built around all kinds of topic areas, but I especially wanted to point out the social and emotional learning section on this, because I do believe there's different tiles and different topics, but we are spotlighting all kinds of different partners, lots of high quality content here, especially for families when navigating the web. Needle in a haystack when it comes to finding quality video, quality podcast, a quality learning experience for our kids. So the resources for social emotional learning at the high school level can be broken down into activities, articles, like I mentioned, podcasts, interactive, worksheets, lessons, videos, and they come from all kinds of great folks out there doing good things around social emotional learning. So Peer Health Exchange, Global Oneness Project, A Part of Me, so you can kind of see all of the different things. Mental Health Adventure, it's a website. Though my personal favorite is this one called Shared Stories. This is amazing. Storify is the resource, and you go out and you can hear all kinds of different stories from, an animation or real folks sharing their stories around their experiences, their life experiences. And what a great way to listen to these stories and talk to your kids about what does that mean and how do we as a family understand that and build empathy for that. So I invite you to go to wideopenschool.org. Lots of information. I happen to be in the 9-12 section, but there is grades 6 through 8 and even younger. And so lots and lots of different activities here worth taking a look. And then last but not least, I wanted to share out, go back to my slide deck. So all of the things I talked about are listed on this slide right here. So you have access to everything. Let me go back. We have a feedback. If you don't mind giving us feedback, we're always looking to improve. So let me know by taking this. It's a quick 5 questions, 6 questions, just to let us know how we're doing and what resonated with you and what was most helpful. And then if you really enjoyed what you saw this evening, in terms of the research and the resources for families, we invite you to join our upcoming sessions. Next one is September 16th, Ready to Partner, 5 Steps for a Different Kind of School Year. And then I'll be back on September 23rd, and I'm going to talk about how to be safe online and balance tech usage in a world of virtual learning. So we're going to take a deeper dive into engaging families and support with the classroom and the learning that's happening. And then also on the 23rd, learning resources for families. So another just curated 30-minute content discussion around resources that are all vetted and high quality. So we invite you to join us on those as well. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We want to support you, and we wish you the best of luck as you navigate this upcoming school year and your day-to-day routine. Please reach out if we can help in any way, and we'll see you next time.